my creative critters, and welcome to Sketching with Sarah. I'm Sarah, and today's video is gonna be more of a short update really, because this is the part 2 of my video from last week where I started my first embroidery project. If you're curious to see where the sketch I drew that inspired this stitched illustration, definitely check out part 1. I will have a card here on the screen and a link below if you want to check it out. I also share everything that came in the embroidery starter kit that I found on Amazon in that video too. It was only $14.99, and let me tell you, it came with a ton of stuff. I have a link below to the kit too if you want to get one yourself. I will be sharing how some of these supplies didn't really last, but I think overall it's an amazing starter kit to get everything that you need to get into embroidery. So as you can see, I made a ton of progress since last week, and one of the main points that I made in part 1 is that embroidery takes time. A lot of time. And I realized very quickly that this was a very ambitious first project for someone who's never embroidered before like me. Although I don't really know any proper techniques or what different stitches are called or anything like that, I did really try to vary the texture in each of the parts of the embroidery and made the directions of the stitches make sense with the shapes that it was forming, if that makes sense. Looking back, I do wish I had more darker thread colors overall, especially in that yellow part. It's a little bit harder to distinguish what's going on there really, but I do like the textures I have in there anyway. It's all very one tone, but I do like the colors that I chose and how cute they look together. It's so fun and bright, and I feel like there's just enough moving throughout it to make it look unified. My original plan for this piece was to also stitch in a blue background that complemented the rest of the colors nicely, but didn't compete a ton with the other colors. I think a blue background would help tie my feral creature, which by the way is a ferret eel, my feral creature into the rest of his surroundings better, and give the composition a little more unity. It would be so much easier to just have started with a blue fabric, to be honest, and I still might go in and stitch the background in too, who knows? I find embroidery really therapeutic, and I think it's such a leisurely thing to keep busy while watching TV or podcasts or YouTube or anything really. Or just hanging out with the family and have something to keep your hands busy. It is pretty mindless once you get into the groove of it, which I like too. The original sketch that I did on the embroidery fabric itself was in blue water erasable ink, and I don't know how I feel about washing this really, especially with the situation on the back side of it, which you'll see in a minute. So that's another reason I wanted to add a blue background stitching to kind of hide those lines even more, but I think I did an okay job trying to cover up as much as I could with the existing colors of the things in the embroidery image already. So about the supplies in this embroidery kit I got off Amazon. It did come with a couple needle threaders. I'm not sure if that's exactly what they're called, and honestly I can't be bothered to look it up, but basically it's this genius tool used to thread thicker strands through a needle. I use this all the time throughout this entire process because the needles that I got in this kit had a really narrow hole, and with the thickness of all the threads, it was really hard to thread the needle by hand. I didn't do any strand separating, so that's also probably why, but as you can see, the loop part completely ripped out of the handle from pulling the thread through so much. I do want to mention though that this did take about halfway through the entire project for the first one to give out, and after that one went, I was real gentle with the other blue one. It is pretty cheap, but again, for the price of the whole kit and getting so many colors of thread and the hoops and the fabric and a ton of other helpful stuff to get started, I feel like it's inevitable to have lower quality tools, especially using it how I was without separating the threads, and I was being kind of rough with it maybe. But anyway, the next thing I want to talk about is the needle. So I basically used one needle throughout the whole project, and the kit came with a little container of a ton of them, so I could have easily changed out needles if I wanted to, but I was wondering if anyone out there who embroiders, does this happen to your needles too? I think it's the way that I hold it and stitch maybe, because it was definitely easier with the bend versus having the needle straight. I don't know, but it's just crazy how much it bends, and I feel like as long as it was comfortable and did the job, I don't see what the harm is in a bent needle. And it definitely didn't bend right away. It did take a lot of use for it to gradually get to this angle, I guess. So it's not like it was super flimsy or anything like that, but over time it did get pretty bent. But please let me know your thoughts. I'm genuinely curious. Or maybe this is just a normal thing that other people also prefer. I'm not really sure. Like I said, I'm pretty new to embroidery. The last thing I want to talk about is the Major League fraying action happening with this fabric. I think there's a way to seal this at the beginning maybe, and maybe I was just too lazy to do it, or I didn't know what I have to do. So if you have any tips, please let me know too. I cut a lot of the excess fabric around the hoop to make it a little bit easier for me to manage at the beginning, but I feel like I should have left way more fabric around the edges because it kept unwinding no matter how careful I was and how gently I set it down. When I was stretching this fabric in the hoop at the beginning, the fabric was really stiff, so I could not really stretch it at all. But I did notice once I was stitching more, the fabric would bow and bulge as I stitched, which I feel like is pretty normal since you can't really avoid that. But since I couldn't re-stretch the fabric to keep it taut, it was kind of annoying, so I had to be extra gentle. If you embroider, is there a type of fabric that you recommend, that you like to embroider on the most? I'd like to know. For this fabric, I did appreciate the bigger holes at first because it made it easier to thread the needle through, obviously. But when I got down to the more detailed areas, it was harder to get the stitches to not feel so part of a grid, you know, like pixely, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but hopefully you get it. Also, can we just admire the backside of this embroidery for a second? Yeah, I kind of just went wherever I felt like and was basically just too lazy to cut the thread, re-knotted and thread and restart somewhere else. So I kind of just went all over the place wherever I pleased. It's not the smartest approach since I was working with a finite amount of each color, and all those long threads in the back are kind of just wasted now, but for this little project, I think I made the most of what I had, especially for my first time embroidering something. I think it's kind of funny to see the pretty fronts and all the nice textures and whatever and how smooth everything is, and then you flip it over and it's just chaos. So follow me on TikTok, it's at SketchingWSarah, same as my Twitter. Also, if you've ever embroidered, please share any tips you have about displaying your embroidery projects, because I don't even know where to start and I don't know what to do. And I've seen frames and stuff like that, but I would really appreciate some of your insight on what worked best for you, on how to display your embroideries. It would be real helpful, and I'm sure other people would want to know too. So let me know in the comments below. Thank you. So obviously this week's video is a real short one, but I did have a pretty busy week this week. It was Father's Day, and so I made my chocolate cake. And another fun thing I did was I took my dog to a dog park pond for the first time, and she was swimming and she was living the dream. And needless to say, it was bath time immediately afterwards. She loves playing fetch on land, and tennis balls are definitely her favorite toy, but on the water, it's a whole new thing, and she loved it. Even if she was a little shy at first. She was jumping in just because in no time. I could talk about my daughter all day, but anyway, this is the chocolate cake I made too, and it was so good. Chef kiss. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this short but sweet update to my first ever embroidery adventure. And if you did, don't forget to leave this video a like and subscribe for more art and animal related content. I upload a new video here every Friday, and I'd love to have you become a creative critter with me and follow along on my YouTube journey. If you haven't seen part 1, definitely do that. It's linked below, and it will be at the end screen of this video if you haven't seen it yet, to see the beginnings of this embroidery endeavor. I also have links to all of my social media in my description as well, like Instagram, Patreon, and TikTok, where I posted a funny TikTok about the backside of this piece, like I said, so definitely go check that one out too. I always have links to the supplies I use in every video in my description as well, so if you want to try out embroidery but you don't want to spend a lot of money, just want to kind of dip your toes into it while getting a good variety of supplies to start off with, I definitely recommend the kit that I used. And if you made it this far, please leave me a comment and let me know how your week has been. I hope you guys are living the dream like my dog is, and hopefully are finding more freedom this summer with more things opening up. Thank you guys so much for watching, stay creative, and I'll see you in next Friday's video. But please let me know your thoughts, because I'm genuinely